Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The tension at Forrester Creations had been building for far too long, and for Hope Logan Spencer, it was beginning to feel like a slow, suffocating weight pressing down on her dreams. Every time she dared to believe that her fashion line might finally have its moment, another delay came crashing in, stripping away her confidence piece by fragile piece. When Steffy Forrester Finnegan once again put the brakes on hope for the future, it wasn't just a professional setback, it felt deeply personal, like a door slamming shut just as Hope reached for the handle. Steffy's reasoning was calm, almost clinical, as she insisted that couture needed to remain the company's primary focus for now. But her reassurance that Hope's line could be revisited someday rang hollow. There was always a someday, always a promise lingering just out of reach, and Hope could feel that promise slipping further into the distance. The words might have been meant to comfort her, but instead, they left her standing in uncertainty, questioning whether her vision would ever truly matter within those walls. As the reality of the situation settled in, Hope found herself spiraling into doubt, her optimism dimming under the weight of repeated disappointments. It wasn't just about one delay anymore, it was about a pattern that refused to break, a cycle that kept her line from ever gaining real momentum. She couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard she fought, hope for the future would always remain an afterthought if Steffy continued to stall its progress. That lingering frustration followed her into the evening, casting a shadow over what should have been a comforting family gathering at the Spencer mansion. Sitting down with Liam Spencer, Katie Logan Spencer, and Bill Spencer, Hope tried to find solace in familiar faces, but her thoughts refused to quiet. The atmosphere around the table was warm, filled with casual conversation and shared laughter. Yet Hope's heart felt distant, weighed down by everything she had just endured. Even as she listened, her mind kept drifting back to the same painful question. How much longer could she keep fighting for something that never seemed to move forward? It was Katie's voice that eventually broke through the haze, her words carrying a sense of forward momentum that immediately caught Hope's attention. As Katie spoke about leaving behind the past and focusing on the next big opportunity, there was a spark in her tone, a quiet confidence that hinted at something new waiting just beyond the horizon. When she learned about Hope's latest setback, that spark ignited into something more purposeful, and suddenly the conversation shifted. Katie didn't just sympathize, she challenged Hope to think differently, to consider a path she may never have seriously entertained before. The idea came almost naturally, as if it had been waiting for the right moment to surface, and Katie urged her niece to imagine what it would be like to step away from Forrester Creations entirely. Instead of fighting for scraps of opportunity, Hope could build something of her own within the Logan family brand, a place where her voice might finally be heard without hesitation. The suggestion lingered in the air, both thrilling and terrifying in equal measure, and Hope couldn't ignore the storm of emotions it stirred within her. Walking away from Forrester wouldn't just be a career move. It would send shockwaves through her entire family, igniting tensions that were already simmering beneath the surface. She knew exactly how it would look to Steffy, to Brooke, to Ridge. They would see it as betrayal, a defection that would deepen the divide between them. The thought alone made her hesitate, her loyalty pulling her in one direction while her frustration pushed her in another. But Katie didn't back down, gently reminding Hope that Logan wasn't just a business, it was her family's legacy, a place where she belonged just as much as anyone else. There was strength in that argument, a sense of grounding that made the possibility feel less like a reckless leap and more like a long overdue step forward. As Katie continued to paint the picture, the advantages became harder for Hope to ignore, each one addressing the very struggles that had been holding her back. At Logan, she wouldn't have to constantly fear her line being shelved or delayed without warning. She could finally experience stability, a foundation strong enough to support her creativity instead of stifling it. The freedom to design without limitations, to bring her ideas to life without interference, felt almost too good to be true after everything she had endured. Even the idea of starting fresh began to take on a new kind of beauty, especially when the reality set in that she might not be able to use the Hope for the Future name if it remained tied to Forrester. Perhaps this wasn't an ending at all, but a transformation, a chance to evolve into something stronger, something entirely her own. The more she considered it, the more the fear began to give way to a quiet, growing sense of possibility. And then, just when it seemed the offer couldn't become any more compelling, Katie introduced another piece to the puzzle that shifted everything. She revealed that she had already been in talks with Deacon Sharp about a potential role within Logan, opening the door for a collaboration that could strengthen both their futures. The idea of working alongside someone who believed in her, someone who would stand beside her rather than hold her back, added a new layer of excitement to the opportunity. Suddenly, this wasn't just about escaping frustration. It was about building something meaningful with people who truly supported her vision. The offer transformed from a risky alternative into something that felt undeniably right, a chance that might never come again if she let it slip away. Hope could feel the weight of the decision pressing in, but for the first time in a long while, it wasn't crushing her, it was pushing her forward. In that moment, the path ahead began to take shape with startling clarity, and Hope realized that staying where she was might no longer be an option. The thought of resigning from Forrester Creations, of leaving behind everything she had fought for, was both heartbreaking and liberating, a bittersweet turning point that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. If she chose to move forward with Logan, it wouldn't just be a career shift. It would be a declaration, a bold step into a future where her dreams were no longer controlled by someone else's priorities. And as the realization settled in, it became clear that such a move would not go unnoticed. Steffy, Brooke, and Ridge would undoubtedly react with anger, their frustration ignited by what they would see as a betrayal of loyalty and trust. Yet for Hope, this wasn't about betrayal. It was about survival, about reclaiming her voice and refusing to let it be silenced any longer. As the evening drew on, the atmosphere at the Spencer mansion shifted in subtle but powerful ways, the conversation planting seeds that would soon grow into life-altering decisions. Hope sat quietly for a moment, absorbing everything, feeling the weight of her past struggles blending with the fragile promise of a new beginning. The road ahead would not be easy, and the fallout would be intense. But there was a quiet strength rising within her, a determination that refused to be ignored. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something being decided for her. It felt like something she could finally take control of. And as the possibilities stretched out before her, one truth became impossible to deny. Hope Logan Spencer was standing on the edge of a transformation that could change everything. And whether it led to triumph or turmoil, there was no turning back now. The night carried on with a quiet intensity, the kind that settles in after life-altering possibilities have been spoken aloud. And for Hope Logan Spencer, every passing second felt heavier with meaning. The laughter around the Spencer mansion softened into a distant hum, no longer the center of her world as her thoughts drifted inward, tracing every risk and every reward laid out before her. She could almost see it. The moment she would walk away from Forrester Creations, the stunned silence that would follow, the ripple of shock spreading through Steffy Forrester Finnegan, Brooke Logan Forrester, and Ridge Forrester like a sudden storm. That image both terrified and empowered her, because beneath the fear was a truth she could no longer ignore. Staying meant slowly fading, while leaving meant finally fighting for herself. Liam Spencer watched her closely, sensing the shift in her energy, the quiet storm behind her eyes. But even his presence couldn't anchor her to the past anymore. Something had changed, something irreversible, and Hope knew that by the time the sun rose again, she might not be the same woman who had walked into that house. By morning, the world felt sharper, clearer, as though the weight of indecision had burned away overnight, leaving only resolve in its place. Hope stood at the threshold of Forrester Creations with a calm determination that masked the emotional turmoil still swirling beneath the surface. Every hallway, every design board, every memory whispered reminders of what she had built there. But instead of holding her back, those memories now felt like stepping stones leading her forward. When she finally faced Steffy, the air between them was thick with unspoken history, a fragile tension that had been building for far too long. There was no dramatic outburst, no explosive confrontation, just a quiet, unwavering declaration that carried more power than any argument ever could. Hope made it clear that she was done waiting, done living in the shadow of delays and empty promises, and that she was choosing a different path, one where her voice would no longer be sidelined. The words landed like a shockwave, leaving Steffy momentarily speechless, her composure cracking just enough to reveal the frustration simmering beneath. The fallout was immediate, as expected, but no less intense for its predictability, and it spread quickly through the Forrester family like wildfire. Brooke Logan Forrester struggled to process the news, caught between her loyalty to her daughter and the complicated ties that bound her to the company, her emotions pulling her in conflicting directions. Ridge Forrester's reaction carried its own weight, a mixture of disbelief and disappointment that only deepened the sense of betrayal hanging in the air. To them, this wasn't just a business decision. It was a fracture in the family dynamic, a line being drawn that could not easily be erased. Yet for Hope, the pain of their reactions only reaffirmed what she had already realized. She could not continue sacrificing her future to preserve a fragile peace that had never truly supported her. And even as the tension escalated, she held on to the quiet certainty that she was finally doing what was right for herself, no matter how difficult the consequences might be. Meanwhile, the energy at Logan began to shift in a completely different direction, charged with anticipation and the thrill of something new taking shape. Katie Logan Spencer moved quickly, turning possibility into action, her confidence unwavering as she laid the groundwork for Hope's arrival. When Deacon Sharp stepped into the picture, there was a sense of alignment that felt almost destined, as though the pieces had been waiting all along for the right moment to fall into place. Together, they began to envision a line that wasn't bound by the past, something bold and fresh that would redefine what Hope stood for as a designer. There was excitement in the air, a creative spark that ignited with every conversation, every idea exchanged, and for Hope, it felt like breathing again after being underwater for far too long. This wasn't just a career move, it was a rebirth, a chance to rebuild her identity on her own terms with people who believed in her vision without hesitation. As word of Hope's decision spread, the divide between Forrester and Logan deepened, turning professional rivalry into something far more personal. Steffy's frustration hardened into determination, her focus sharpening as she prepared to defend Forrester Creations against what she now saw as a direct challenge. Brooke found herself caught in the middle, her heart pulled in two directions as she tried to reconcile her daughter's bold move with the fallout it created within the family. Ridge, too, stood firm in his loyalty to Forrester, his resolve only intensifying as the lines between the two worlds became more defined. Yet even as tensions rose and emotions flared, there was an undeniable sense that something significant was unfolding, something that would reshape not just the companies involved, but the relationships at their core. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision now carried consequences that would echo far beyond the boardroom. And at the center of it all stood Hope, no longer uncertain or hesitant, but transformed by the very challenges that once threatened to break her. The fear hadn't vanished completely, it lingered in quiet moments, a reminder of everything she had risked, but it no longer controlled her. In its place was strength, a steady, unshakable belief that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. As she prepared to unveil her new line under the Logan banner, there was a sense of anticipation that crackled in the air, a promise of something powerful about to be revealed. This was her moment, her chance to prove that she didn't need permission to succeed, that her vision was strong enough to stand on its own. And as the future unfolded before her, filled with both opportunity and uncertainty, one thing became undeniably clear. Hope Logan Spencer had stepped into a new chapter of her life, and there was no turning back from the path she had chosen. The momentum didn't slow, it intensified, building into something that felt almost inevitable, as if every moment of doubt Hope Logan Spencer had ever endured was now being rewritten into purpose. The Logan offices began to hum with a new kind of energy, one that felt raw, unfiltered, and alive in a way Hope hadn't experienced in years. Sketches filled the walls, fabrics draped across tables like fragments of a dream waiting to be stitched together. And every late night carried a sense of excitement instead of exhaustion. With Katie Logan Spencer guiding the business side and Deacon Sharp bringing his own unexpected passion into the process, Hope found herself surrounded by belief instead of hesitation. It wasn't just about launching a new line, it was about proving that she could thrive without limits, that her creativity didn't need approval to exist. And as the days blurred into a whirlwind of preparation, the quiet voice of doubt that once held her back grew softer, replaced by a steady confidence that felt earned. But across town, the atmosphere at Forrester Creations was anything but calm, and the absence of Hope's presence left a void that no one could easily ignore. Steffy Forrester Finnegan threw herself deeper into couture, her determination sharpening into something almost defiant, as though success itself had become her way of pushing back against Hope's departure. Yet beneath that focus lingered an undeniable tension, a flicker of frustration that refused to fade, no matter how much she tried to bury it in work. Ridge Forrester doubled down on his loyalty to the brand, standing firm in the belief that Forrester would always rise above any challenge. But even he couldn't completely dismiss the shift that had taken place. Brooke Logan Forrester, caught between pride and heartache, found herself quietly watching both sides, her emotions tangled in ways that left her restless and uncertain. The company remained strong, but something had changed in its foundation, something subtle yet powerful that hinted at a storm still gathering on the horizon. As the date of Hope's debut drew closer, anticipation began to ripple through the fashion world, whispers spreading about what she was creating under the Logan name. There was curiosity, skepticism, and even excitement, all blending into a charged atmosphere that made the stakes feel impossibly high. Hope could feel it in every glance, every question, every expectation placed on her shoulders. But instead of overwhelming her, it fueled her. She poured everything into the line, every setback, every moment of doubt, every ounce of determination she had fought to reclaim. Each design became a statement, not just of style, but of resilience, carrying the weight of her journey in every stitch and silhouette. And as she stood on the edge of unveiling it all, there was a quiet stillness within her, the kind that only comes when someone knows they've given everything they have. The day of the reveal arrived with a kind of cinematic intensity, the air thick with anticipation as the Logan team prepared to step into the spotlight. Lights, cameras, and expectant faces filled the space, creating an atmosphere that felt both electrifying and fragile, as though everything could change in a single moment. Hope stood behind the scenes, her heart racing but her expression calm, knowing that this was more than just a fashion show. It was a declaration of who she had become. When the first model stepped onto the runway, time seemed to slow, each movement carrying the weight of Hope's vision into the world. The design spoke without words, bold yet elegant, fresh yet deeply personal, capturing attention in a way that couldn't be ignored. And as the show unfolded, the reaction began to shift from curiosity to admiration, the energy in the room transforming into something powerful and undeniable. Far away from the runway, the impact was felt just as strongly within the walls of Forrester Creations, where the reaction to Hope's success stirred emotions that had been simmering beneath the surface. Steffy watched with a controlled expression, but the intensity in her eyes betrayed the storm within, a mix of frustration, disbelief, and reluctant acknowledgement. Ridge remained composed, yet there was a weight in his silence, an understanding that this wasn't something they could simply dismiss or outshine overnight. Brooke's reaction was perhaps the most complex of all, her pride in her daughter shining through even as it clashed with the tension it created within her world. The divide between the two companies had now become something far more real, far more personal, and there was no denying that Hope had made her mark in a way that demanded attention. And as the applause echoed and the final moments of the show settled into memory, Hope stood in the glow of something she had fought so hard to achieve, her journey etched into every success surrounding her. This wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point, a moment that proved she could stand on her own and be seen for exactly who she was. The path ahead would still be filled with challenges, rivalries, and emotional battles that had yet to unfold. But for now, she allowed herself to feel it all. The relief, the pride, the quiet triumph of knowing she had taken control of her destiny. The world she had stepped into was bigger, more uncertain, and more demanding than ever before. But she no longer feared it.